Every year in mid-autumn, a street market opens up across Jewish neighborhoods in Brooklyn. Although this may look like any other street fair or a farmer's market, this is no ordinary market.
The people gathering here are not looking for produce that they can eat. Rather, they are here to participate in a special ritual, the gathering of the four species, the Arba Minim. The four species are different plants which are gathered together. In the first part, the branches of a palm tree are tied with myrtle and willow, called the lulav. The second part is a citron fruit, called an Esrog, which comes from the words in the Torah of Pri Eitz Hadar, which means the fruit of a splendid tree. In biblical times, there seemed to be an understanding what this fruit is, but today in the modern era, the breed of citron considered to be splendid seemed to be clouded in doubt. This is the story of a centuries-long search for a tree growing the Torah's splendid fruit, and how one man became synonymous with the quality of the splendid citron.
The four species are gathered for the prayers that occur on the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, named for the huts in which Jewish people eat in, called sukkahs, which are a reminder of the Jewish travels in the desert. The four species are shaken in all 6 directions, in connection to the Sukkot, which symbolizes God's protection from the dangers and worries of life, and finding shelter in a spiritual message of God, community, and acceptance.
Like anything Jewish, there are rules which ensure that the four species are kosher. Most obvious is that the species cannot be missing parts of it. This is why you can see people inspecting the branches, and especially the citrons, for any noticeable damage that will make a specimen unkosher. Many people do not stick to the bare minimum. In fact, most people want their set to be splendid. Or in Hebrew, mehudar. There is a great cultural lore regarding the investment of money into the purchase of a splendid citron. And so people often search through heaps of esrogim to find their perfect match. The esrog has come to represent the idea of hidur, which is searching for the best way to practice a ritual. And the symbol of the splendid citron has been historically used in Jewish design and iconography like coins and mosaics. In the Jewish catacombs in Italy, called Vigna Rondinini, which dates back to the 1st century of the Common Era, various Jewish iconography was used to denote the heritage of the people buried there. Most notable is the use of the menorah. However, we will occasionally glimpse an Esrog, often accompanied by a lulav.
When the Torah refers to the gathering of the 4 species, it refers to the Esrog as Purebred Citrons, the fruit of a splendid tree. This phrasing has come to mean an Esrog used in the ritual needs to be purebred and cannot be a hybrid.
This meant that for an Esrog to be kosher, it cannot be a mixed breed with any other fruits, thereby spoiling the splendidness. Citrons were often grafted onto lemon trees to provide a more stable and reliable product, which hybridized the Esrog and rendered it unkosher for the ritual. How then could one confirm that the citrons we know today are indeed purebred and are not from hybridized trees despite their looks? This problem first became an issue for the Jewish communities in Northern Europe in the 16th century, since they lived in small towns called shtetls and could not watch the citrons grow and had to rely on the word of the merchant. The solution at the time was to source the Esrogs from groves in southern Italy in an area called Calabria, as these were regarded as pure and non-grafted. However, suspicions arose about this area, and so the search began. This was a search for a purebred Esrog, one that could be used for the 4 species, a splendid citron. Today, researchers have looked at the archaeological findings to see if there is a consistent style of variations that we could consider the most pure Esrog. But although the citrons portrayed often have a protruding stem called a pitum, there seems to be no consistent style in the archaeological findings. In 1708, the German botanist Johann Vlachmer published his book where he depicts many citrons, most of which have no consistent style, except one variety which did produce offsprings that had traits that matched the parent. He called this variety Der Juden Citronat Apfel, meaning the Jews' citron apple, referring to the large rind of the Esrog, which is similar to an apple. Did this mean that the search was over and that the true breed of Esrog had been found? Then why are there several breeds found on the streets of Brooklyn today? And how do we know that the Esrog that is being sold is a purebred, splendid citron?
In the 1940s, The search for the pure breed of Esrog was at the heart of Jewish practice of gathering the 4 species, and every variety of citron seemed to be called into doubt. Such a task, it seemed, was waiting for a leader to clarify the matter once and for all. This man was Rabbi Avraham Karlitz, the leader of Orthodox Jews in Israel at the time. Better known for his work, the Chazon Ish.
He studied under the leading rabbis in Belarus and Lithuania, and in the 1930s, he immigrated to what was then the British Mandate of Palestine. The Chazon Ish devoted his life to the study of Torah, as well as gaining a practical knowledge of secular subjects like botany. And during his tenure in Israel, he traveled throughout the state and searched for an Esrog, which he could be confident to declare as the pure breed. On his travels, the Chazon Ish observed a tree in Shechem and selected some citrons to use for the ritual. After the holiday, he called his student, Rabbi Michael Yehuda Lefkowitz, and took out the Esrog over which he had said the blessings on Sukkot. As the legend goes, the Chazon Ish said to his student, "Take the seeds from this fruit and plant a tree that will produce Esrogim Mehudarim." Rabbi Lefkowitz took the seeds and let them germinate and planted a sapling in his yard, and after about 2 years, it began producing Esrogim. Before the Sukkot of the 4th year, the Chazon Ish came to inspect the fruits of this splendid tree. As he examined, he was finally reassured that this was not a hybridized tree. This would be the Chazon Ish variety for years to come. Years later, Rabbi Lefkowitz was asked, how did the Chazon Ish know that his fruits were not a hybrid? Rabbi Lefkowitz responded, the Chazon Ish had an encyclopedic knowledge, and he understood concepts like no one else could. Although he never explained why he chose that particular tree, the Chazon Ish gave so much consideration that it leaves no question that it was a kosher Esrog. And so the legend began. Today, on the streets of Brooklyn, people proudly sell their merchandise proclaiming that their citrons are Chazon Ish, using the name attributed to Rabbi Karelitz as a guarantee of genetic quality for the Lefkowitz variety citrons. Is there any way to confirm that the variety of citrons referred to as Chazon Ish are actually purebred? And what about the other varieties of citrons? Are they hybridized or pure as well? And how do we go about finding out? The Chazon Ish himself is quoted to have said, I have wandered among the trees in Shechem, analyzing the different varieties, and this tree seemed to be the most authentic. The legend of the Chazon Ish and the magic Esrog tree seems a fitting conclusion in the search for the splendid citron.
In 2005, a scientific study appeared in the journal called Hort Science that was co-authored by a man called Eliezer Goldschmidt. who is an Israeli researcher who works with citrus fruits and wrote about the botany from a Torah perspective.
In the study, they gathered 12 varieties of citrons and extracted their DNA. This DNA was then used in a process called the random amplification of polymorphic DNA, or RAPID. This turns part of the Esrog's genome into what can best be described as a unique DNA barcode. This barcode can then be compared across varieties and across species in order to tell the authenticity of a particular fruit's genome. The researchers in the study found that although there were some genetic variety among the citrons, there was a clear difference between an Esrog and other citrus fruits like a lemon. The paper, called The Search for the Authentic Citron, states, "The results of the genetic analysis are unequivocal and do not leave much room for interpretation. Furthermore, and perhaps more important, the results obtained suggest that there was no integration by lemons or other citrus genomes into any part of the citrons examined. Citron was found to have a unique cpDNA profile. In the present study, all the citrons tested showed this specific citron cpDNA band." Research is still being done with the citrons to study the phylogenetics of the splendid tree. To this day, the name of the Chazon Ish represents a standard of quality for the citrons as well as the other species. And so concludes a centuries-old search for the authentic and pure splendid citron.
You have to shaky is nice, no? No. When it's like this, no good. Yeah. I want it tight. No, it's a hidur thing. It's a hidur mitzvah. What, moose like this? Yeah. Really? Yeah. You know what this is called? This is called kiskis. That's what I'm talking about. This is a mitzvah. Really? When you shave the lulav, you shouldn't go like this. You go like this. No, I know that. So it has to make the noise. Water straight, you can't shave. This is loose. It's good. That's nice. That's the nice. It should make this noise. If it's tight, then it doesn't make the noise. You know?